The elevator doors opened on the ground floor of Meridian Tower at 8:47 a.m. Victoria Chen stepped in, wearing a black Armani suit and holding her third espresso of the morning. She was 31 years old, newly appointed CEO of Meridian Financial Group, and she had exactly 13 minutes to reach the 42nd floor for the emergency board meeting that would define her first quarter. Then a man in a wrinkled denim jacket stepped in behind her, holding the hand of a small girl clutching a stuffed bear. The girl's shoes lit up when she walked. The man's shirt had a visible coffee stain near the collar. He pressed the button for the 42nd floor. Victoria looked at him once. Then she moved to the far corner of the elevator and pulled out her phone. "Excuse me," the man said quietly. His voice carried no urgency. "You're standing on my daughter's backpack." Victoria glanced down. A small pink backpack sat near her heel. She stepped aside without moving it. She did not apologize. She returned to her phone. The girl looked up at her father. "Daddy, is she going to the same floor as us?" "Looks like it, sweetheart," the man said. He crouched down and picked up the backpack, checking the zippers with the careful attention of someone who has learned that broken zippers matter. The girl's name was Emma. The bear was named Button. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from Gerald Moss, the CFO. "Where are you? Board is waiting." The old man finally showed. She typed back, "2 minutes." The elevator stopped on the 15th floor. A maintenance worker started to enter, saw Victoria's expression, and stepped back. The doors closed. Victoria looked at the man again. The coffee stain. The denim jacket that had seen better years. The fact that he was bringing a child to the executive floor of a financial services building at 8:50 on a Tuesday morning. She said it before she had decided to say it. "The daycare entrance is on the ground floor. Security can redirect you." The man looked at her. His face did not change. "We're not looking for daycare." "Then you're on the wrong floor," Victoria said. 42 is executive offices only, no public access." Emma pulled on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, does she work for you?" The man's mouth moved slightly, not quite a smile. "Not exactly, Button." Victoria's phone buzzed again. Another text from Gerald. "He's asking where you are. Not happy." The elevator passed the 30th floor. Victoria straightened her jacket. She was about to deliver the quarterly projections to a board that had spent 6 months questioning whether she was old enough, experienced enough, or frankly capable enough to lead a firm her grandfather had built from nothing. She did not have time for this. "Look," she said, her voice carrying the particular edge of someone who has made an art of efficiency. "I don't know what you think is on 42, but if you're here for a meeting, you're underdressed. If you're here for a job interview, you're late, and if you're lost, security will help you once we arrive." The man said nothing. He adjusted Emma's backpack strap where it had twisted. Emma looked at Victoria with the frank assessment of a 6-year-old. "You're not very nice," Emma said. Victoria's face flushed. She opened her mouth. The elevator chimed. 42nd floor. The doors opened. Gerald Moss was standing directly in front of the elevator with a tablet in his hand and panic in his eyes. Behind him, the glass doors to the executive boardroom were visible. Through them, Victoria could see 11 board members seated around the table. At the head of the table sat a man she had never met in person. White hair, lean build. Hands folded on the table in front of him with the stillness of someone who did not need to perform authority because he simply had it. James Chen, founder, chairman, her grandfather. The man who had not attended a board meeting in 5 years. The man whose health issues had necessitated the sudden leadership transition that put Victoria in the CEO seat 3 months ago. The man whose single vote controlled 40% of the company's shares. Gerald's eyes moved from Victoria to the man in the denim jacket standing beside her. Gerald's face went pale. "Mr. Chen," Gerald said, "we didn't know you were bringing—" "My daughter needed to see where I work," the man in the denim jacket said. His voice was calm. "It's bring your child to work day at her school." Victoria's brain caught up to the situation in the specific way that a car engine catches up after the transmission has already failed. The man in the elevator, the wrinkled jacket, the coffee stain, the 6-year-old with the light-up shoes. James Chen had a son. Victoria knew this distantly, the way you know facts that have never mattered to your daily life. The son had left the company years ago. Family tragedy. The details were vague in her memory because she had never bothered to ask. She remembered now there had been a memo 5 years ago. Daniel Chen, former VP of Strategic Development, had resigned following the death of his wife. A car accident. Claire Chen, 29, killed by a drunk driver on the interstate. Emma had been 18 months old. The company had sent flowers. Victoria had been an analyst then, 3 levels removed from executive decisions. She had not attended the funeral. She had not thought about it again until this moment, standing in front of the man whose life had collapsed while she was reviewing spreadsheets in a cubicle on the 17th floor. The man turned to Victoria. He extended his hand. "Daniel Chen," he said. "I don't think we've met." Victoria shook his hand. Her throat had gone dry. "I'm the new CEO," Daniel said. "I know. My father mentioned you were doing well." Through the glass, the white-haired man at the head of the table raised one hand in a small gesture. Daniel nodded. He looked down at Emma. "Go say hi to Grandpa," he said. "Then we'll get you to school." Emma ran through the glass doors. The board members watched her cross the room with the unified attention of people who have just realized the meeting they planned is not the meeting they're having. Daniel turned back to Victoria. "I apologize for the confusion. I should have identified myself in the elevator." "No," Victoria said. The word came out too quickly. "I should have—" She stopped. There was no version of the sentence that made it better. Daniel waited. When she didn't continue, he said, "I'm here to vote my father's proxy on the Q1 assessment. He asked me to attend in person." 40% of the company's voting shares. In the hands of a man she had just told was underdressed and late. Victoria's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. A text from her assistant. "Emergency revision to projections. Dockside Holdings pulled their commitment. We're 40 million short." The quarterly numbers she was about to present had just collapsed. The board that was already questioning her capability was about to watch her miss her first major target by $40 million, and the man whose vote could remove her from the CEO seat before lunch had just watched her dismiss him as lost and underdressed in an elevator. She looked at Daniel. He was watching her with the same calm he'd had when she stepped on his daughter's backpack. "I owe you an apology," Victoria said. "A real one. What I said in the elevator was efficient," Daniel said. "You were trying to solve what looked like a problem. You were wrong about the situation. That happens." "It shouldn't have happened like that." He tilted his head slightly. "Probably not." A pause. The boardroom behind him was waiting. The quarterly report was waiting. The $40 million gap was waiting. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Why didn't you correct me immediately?" Daniel looked at Emma through the glass. She was sitting on her grandfather's lap, showing him button. "Because my daughter was watching," he said. "And I wanted to see if you'd apologize when you realized. People don't usually apologize to people they think are beneath them, even when they find out they were wrong." Victoria felt the weight of the statement. He was right. She had apologized because he turned out to be important, not because she'd been rude to a stranger. "I should have apologized either way," she said quietly. "Yes," Daniel said. "You should have." He stepped past her toward the boardroom. Then he stopped. "The dockside deal," he said. "I saw the alert. You're short $40 million on the quarterly target." Victoria's eyes widened. "How did you—" "I still get the board alerts," Daniel said. "Old security clearance. Nobody ever turned it off." He looked at her directly. "Vanguard Industrial is looking for a structured finance partner for their Pacific expansion. They approached my father last month. He referred them to you. The deal is $55 million. If you close it this week, you beat the target instead of missing it." Victoria's mind was already moving. Vanguard Industrial. She knew the company. She'd read about their expansion plans. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Daniel adjusted his jacket. The coffee stain was still visible. "Because my father thinks you're capable," he said, "and I trust his judgment more than I trust a 90-second elevator ride." He walked into the boardroom. Victoria stood in the hallway for 3 seconds. Then she turned to Gerald. Get me everything we have on Vanguard Industrial. I need a proposal outline in 20 minutes. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. Daniel Chen voted to approve the revised Q1 strategy with one condition: that the executive team implement a mandatory bias awareness training program, starting with the CEO. Nobody asked why. Through the glass wall, Victoria had watched Emma sit quietly beside her grandfather for the entire meeting, coloring in a notebook he'd apparently kept in his desk drawer for exactly this purpose. At one point, the girl had held up a drawing: 3 figures in front of a tall building. One tall figure with white hair, one medium figure with dark hair and a coffee stain, one small figure holding something brown and round, which was presumably Button. James Chen had looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then he'd folded it carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. His hand had stayed there, resting over the pocket, for the remainder of the meeting. Victoria had noticed. She didn't know why it mattered, but it did. Victoria closed the Vanguard deal on Thursday. $55 million structured finance agreement. The quarterly target was beaten by $15 million. The following Monday, she arrived at the office at 8:30. She took the elevator to the 42nd floor. At 8:47, the doors opened on the ground floor. A young woman in a service uniform stepped in, holding a mop and a supply cart. Victoria moved her briefcase to make room. "Good morning," Victoria said. The woman looked surprised. Then she smiled. "Good morning." They rode in silence to the 15th floor. When the woman exited, Victoria held the door. "Have a good day," Victoria said. The woman nodded and stepped out. The doors closed. Victoria looked at her reflection in the polished elevator wall. She thought about Daniel Chen's coffee-stained shirt, about Emma's light-up shoes, about the fact that she'd learned more about leadership in 90 seconds than in 3 months of board meetings. She thought about the small kindnesses that cost nothing: moving a briefcase, holding a door, saying good morning to someone whose name you'd never learn. She thought about the fact that for 3 months she'd walked past the cleaning staff, the mailroom workers, the security guards at the front desk, without ever once making eye contact. Not because she was cruel, because she'd been efficient, because time was limited, and attention was a resource, and she'd allocated both to the people who mattered. The people who mattered. She wondered, with the particular clarity that comes after you've already made the mistake, who had decided that some people mattered more than others, and whether she'd ever consciously chosen that belief, or if she'd simply absorbed it from every boardroom, every business school lecture, every mentor who had taught her that success meant knowing where to focus and what to ignore. Daniel Chen had taught her something different in 90 seconds. He'd taught her that you never know who you're talking to, but more than that it shouldn't matter. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Emma wanted me to tell you that Button says thank you for moving your foot." "Daniel." Victoria smiled. She typed back, "Tell Button I'm working on being more careful where I step." The response came immediately. "That's all any of us can do." The elevator reached the 42nd floor. The doors opened. Victoria Chen stepped out and went to work. She kept the text message. She didn't know exactly why. But on the days when the pressure mounted and the decisions felt impossible and the voices questioning her capability grew loud, she would read it again. That's all any of us can do. It was enough. That evening, Daniel Chen sat at a small kitchen table in an apartment 14 blocks north of Meridian Tower. Emma was at the table across from him, eating pasta with the focused seriousness of someone who believed proper fork technique mattered. "Did you have a good day at Grandpa's office?" he asked. Emma nodded. "The lady from the elevator was there." "I know. She looked scared when she saw you." Daniel set down his fork. "She was surprised. That's different from scared." Emma considered this. "Did you forgive her?" The question landed in the quiet kitchen with more weight than a 6-year-old's question should carry. Daniel looked at his daughter, at the dark curls she'd inherited from Claire, at the careful way she held her fork, at the stuffed bear sitting in the chair beside her because Button always got a seat at dinner. "I'm working on it," he said. Emma nodded, satisfied. "Mommy always said that's what matters, working on it." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand once. "Your mom was right about a lot of things," he said. They finished dinner. Daniel washed the dishes. Emma dried them with a towel that dragged on the floor because she insisted on helping, even though she was still too small to reach the counter properly. And in that small apartment, with the city lights pressing against the window and the ordinary sounds of an ordinary evening filling the space between them, Daniel Chen thought about elevator rides and second chances and the particular grace required to offer both. He didn't know if Victoria would actually change. People rarely did. But she'd apologized, and she'd meant it. And maybe that was enough to start with.